Hello, everyone, and welcome again to Sarah's Tent. And Nancy is here with me again. Hello, Nancy.
Hi, Sandy.
And I think those of you who have listened to our previous recordings know the reason why we call it In Sarah's Tent, because of her hospitality. And the candle represents the two things. It represents the Torah, and it also, according to Midrash, a candle burned in her tent from Shabbat to Shabbat. So we want everyone to know they are welcome to come into Sarah's tent. And shall we get started? We're going to be reading tonight Genesis chapter 9, verses 8 through 17. Nancy, if you would like to read that for us, and then we'll have some discussion.
Yeah, Sandy. I'm reading from our interlinear Chumash, the Schottenstein edition, and I'm reading Genesis 9, starting with verse 8 through verse 17. So we're right at the end of the Noah story. Well, end of the flood.
Right.
And God said to Noah and to his sons with him, saying, "And as for me, indeed, I establish my covenant with you and with your offspring after you, and with every being that is living that is with you, with the birds, with the animals, and with every beast of the land that is with you, of all that exited the ark, to every beast of the land. I will confirm my covenant with you. Never shall be cut off all flesh again by the waters of the flood, and never shall there be again a flood to destroy the earth." And God said, "This is a sign of the covenant that I give between me and you, and between every being that is living that is with you to generations forever. My rainbow I have set in the cloud, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and between the earth. And it shall happen when I place a cloud over the earth, and it will be seen, the bow, in the cloud. I will remember my covenant, which is between me and you, and between every being that is living among all flesh. And it shall never be again that the waters become a flood to destroy all flesh. And the bow shall be in the cloud, and I will look upon it to remember the covenant that is everlasting between God and between every being live, live that is living among all flesh that is on the earth. And God said to Noah, "This is the sign of the covenant that I have confirmed between me and between all flesh that is upon the earth."
Okay. Thank you, Nancy. So this is, I think, a very important group of scriptures here. It's God making a covenant. One thing I had, all the times I've read this, it never really had made an impression on me that it wasn't just a covenant between God and Noah and his descendants. It was between all living things. God made a covenant even with animals, with birds. I'd never really considered that before, that this covenant is between all living things, that he will not wipe out all living things at one time. Now we know there are instances where we have floods, we have other natural disasters that large groups of people are um, that perish, but it will not cover the entire earth like he made a covenant here, and that it is forever for all generations, forever. And when God says forever, I think that's what he means, forever.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I think he repeats it enough times here that we get the point that this is a covenant. And in these verses, he says the word covenant 7 times.
Yeah. Oh, that's a significant number.
Yeah, just in these few verses. And kind of off the point, but I did want to say this about verses. We say chapter and verse. We say chapter 9, verse 8 or whatever. That's not of Jewish origin. That's not the way the Torah is written. It was added later by the Christians, and we use it just for convenience to help us locate exactly where things are. But it's not original and it's not on a Torah scroll. You won't find chapters and verses on a Torah scroll.
Right, exactly. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out, Nancy. Um, and sometimes, and again, we don't need to spend a lot of time on this, but sometimes it's very illogical where they put a new verse, where they start a new verse. It's like it breaks up a thought, or where they end one chapter and start another chapter. And sometimes it can give a whole different meaning to it when it's broken up in places that seems like it shouldn't be. But there is something in our Chumash that we noticed one time. It is broken down into the aliyahs. Each portion is broken down into 7 sections, one for a section for each day. So we can go through and mark those. But yeah, for convenience sake, it's much easier to say chapter 9, verse 8, and easy to find
Right,
that way. But yeah,
right.
and I think another thing in Torah scroll, no punctuation, no periods, commas, and things like that, which can be a challenge sometimes reading to say where does one thought end and another one begin.
And also, while we're on the topic, no vowels either.
No vowels, yes. And Moshe, our Hebrew teacher, is slowly weaning us off vowels, reading with vowels. He calls them stabilizers, which
Training wheels.
he's British, so he calls them stabilizers. We would call them training wheels on our bike. So he said at some point he will remove the training wheels. Oh,
Scary.
yeah, yes, scary. So, yeah, these first few verses, he confirms several times that he will not destroy everything again like he did. And he makes a covenant. And my question when I was reading this is what exactly is a covenant? And how is it different from a promise? I know when we read later when God makes a covenant with Abraham, the covenant of the pieces, there's a certain procedure that happens there. And I've read when other covenants are made, there's certain things that are done. So, what do you see, Nancy, as the difference between a covenant and a promise? Are they the same, or is there some differences there?
That's a good question. I I know that in legal settings, a covenant lasts forever.
Mm-hmm.
And I would assume that the covenant does not depend on the other person's fulfilling their half.
Okay. I
So
did.
no matter what happens, no matter what we do, like the first creation, the people on the earth and the animals did a whole bunch of bad things, and God destroyed them and started all over. But now he's saying it doesn't really matter how bad you get.
Yeah.
I'm never going to destroy it again.
Right. It's almost like he made the covenant with himself, because we don't see the reaction of the other side, like with Noah and the animals. What was their part in the covenant? I did some reading on this, and it's when I Googled it, it said in Judaism there is a difference between a covenant and a promise. A covenant carries more weight. And a covenant is usually between two parties. A promise can just be one person. Like, I promise I will do XYZ. That doesn't necessarily involve another person. But a covenant, it seems it's between two people or two parties or something like that. To me, it seems more like a contract that you've signed a contract with somebody, and certain conditions are to be met. But a promise, I could make a promise. I might promise that I will never show up at Nancy's house without a gift. Well, Nancy doesn't even have to know about that promise. That's just a promise I made. So promise doesn't have to, the other person doesn't even have to be involved in a promise. So what do you think? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, thank you for explaining that. I hadn't thought of it that way.
Well, and like you said in verse 12, it's a sign forever. Promise might not be forever. The promise might be, well, I'm tired of doing that. I don't want to do that anymore. And we break promises all the time, but it seems like a covenant carries more weight. In fact, I think in the Jewish website I went to look at that, it said a covenant is more sacred than just a promise. So
Also,
it's
the covenant is lots of different groups are listed, and we think that it seems like it's repeating itself, but it's the animals that are with you. It's all of the living things on the earth. These could be different groups, like all the animals that are with you could be like domestic animals, and then all the living beings on the earth could be all of the wildlife, or it could
mhm.
be all the bugs and
Yeah,
creepy crawly
the creepy
things.
crawlies. Yeah.
But it does list things several times, but with a little bit different each time. So I think maybe
Mhm.
it's just covering every possible living thing on the
Yeah.
earth.
And even birds, it lists birds separately. So this covenant is with them also. So makes me wonder how, I mean, Noah could understand this, but, and gives him some comfort because he was concerned that the earth would, or people would degenerate to the point there might be another flood. So it gives him some comfort and hope. But how does it benefit the animals? Do on some level, I don't know how they would understand, okay, God has made a promise, this won't happen. No, not a promise. He's made a covenant that this will never happen again. So I think it's interesting that he includes all the animals, all the living things, even though they might not comprehend what's going on.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah,
But he promises not to destroy them,
right.
or not promises.
Covenant,
He
yeah.
he adds to his covenant
Makes the
that he will
covenant.
not
Yeah,
destroy. Yeah.
yes. So then there's a sign. Um, let's see, I think it's mentioned in beginning in verse 12. God said, "This is a sign of the covenant that I give between me and you and between every being that is living, that is with you to generations forever." So it isn't just to Noah that this covenant is made and the animals that are alive at that time, it's for everything, every living thing that comes after. We can take comfort in that same covenant. It's with us also, this covenant.
Right,
So,
right. And then the sign is the rainbow.
yeah, the rainbow. Yeah, there's some interesting things. I found a couple of interesting things about the rainbow as I was reading on some of this. And one thing I wanted to point out before we move on to that, how it's, and you alluded to it earlier, there it's repeated several times here. This is the sign. I won't do this again between me and the animals, between all living things. And here's the sign. I think at least 3 times it's repeated. Oh, I just put in my notes several times. But yeah, just in these few verses, it's repeated several times. This covenant, it's like Noah, I want you to hold on. I want you to really understand this. Pay attention to me, Noah. I'm telling you this and I'm telling you again. And for me, that's how I learn best, is to hear something and hear it repeated and hear it repeated again. So,
Well, this is a good chunk of verses for that.
yes, exactly.
Yeah. I think I counted 7 times that the word covenant was mentioned in this section.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times the word sign
Well, and
or the
just the
mention of the
entire
sign.
phrase, the entire idea. This is a covenant between me and you and every living thing, and never again will the waters become a flood to destroy everything. Just the whole phrase is repeated more than once. So I think that tells us how important it is. And then the rainbow, that's the symbol of the covenant. Um, Couple of things about the rainbow that I was new to me is that we're not to stare at a rainbow. And I know growing up and for years, we would just really watch the rainbow until it actually faded away because it's just so beautiful. Doesn't happen that often. But I read in a commentary that we should only look at it long enough to say the blessing. And there is a blessing that we should say when we see a rainbow. Nancy, did you have that? Or,
Yeah, I've got it.
okay, you want to read that for us?
So the blessing is, blessed are you, HaShem, our God, King of the universe, who remembers his covenant, is trustworthy in his covenant, and fulfills his word.
Okay. And I'm looking at your notes here, and I really like this that you put in there, that this covenant is not just between God and the Jews or between God and mankind, but it's between all living things, the earth, the living things, humans, all humanity, all animals. It's a promise, not a promise, that's hard to not say that word, a covenant between all humanity. I think that's important.
And it
Um,
gives the impression to me that, because he's saying between me and every living being, that he considers the earth to be to be living as well.
oh, yeah, good.
I don't know. I just would include the earth in that. I
Yeah,
don't have any support for that. That was just a random thought that just came to me.
yeah.
But
But the earth is living and produces living things. I mean, yeah, that's
yeah,
good.
so he's not
And
going to destroy the earth. He's
no,
not going to
well,
destroy the creatures on the earth, and he's not going to destroy the earth.
right. So,
But I didn't understand what you were saying about why we're not supposed to look at a rainbow.
and the commentary that I read did not go into the details, and I didn't do any further research on it. It just said that we should not stare at it only long enough to recite the blessing. But it didn't go into why. That might be something we need to
Asked the
do some more
rabbi.
research on as to why we shouldn't look at it. Um, Maybe because I probably shouldn't speculate. It made me think though of, oh, we haven't read it yet, Lot's wife. She turned around and looked at something she shouldn't have been looking at. Don't know if there's any connection with that, but it made me think of that Maybe because it's tied to destruction. Something, I don't know. But there must be
I
a
don't know.
halakha reason why we shouldn't stare at it.
Yeah,
But
I'd
it's
be
hard
interested
not
to.
to. It's really hard not to because it is so beautiful. And especially the ones where you can see the entire arc of it. Not sometimes, most times it's just a little piece of it that you can see, but there have been times when you can see the whole thing.
Or a double.
And a double. I wonder if there's some significance to that. A double
Oh,
rainbow.
that's a good question.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, rainbow. There is something, let's see, I want to read some commentary here. Let's see. God established a covenant with Noah and his descendants and all living beings until the end of time. This covenant would be signified forever by the rainbow. After a rainstorm, which could have been a harbinger of another deluge like that in Noah's time, the appearance of the rainbow will be a reminder of God's pledge never again to wash away all of mankind in a flood. According to Ibn Ezra, it was then that God created atmospheric conditions that would cause a rainbow to be seen after a rainstorm. So, does that mean they had never seen a rainbow before? Wonder.
I
Yeah.
think that's correct.
It sounds like it, doesn't it? Where it says he created the atmospheric conditions that would cause a rainbow to be seen. Oh, but
But
wait a minute. Most other
yeah.
commentators disagree, maintaining that the rainbow, which had existed since creation, would henceforth be designated as a sign that a deluge like Noah's would never occur. So,
I've
surprise, there's
heard
two
that
schools of thought.
I've heard that the rainbow was created originally
Yeah.
at creation, but it was above the clouds and could not be seen.
Okay.
But then here it's put in the clouds or below the clouds so it could be seen. So maybe that matches the atmospheric conditions where the rainbow could be seen.
Now they could be seen. Before, are you saying like before it was concealed? It was there but concealed. And
Right.
now, I guess maybe in order to bring comfort to Noah and relieve some of his concerns, said, okay, now I will reveal this to you, and this is what it will mean when you see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. That
That's
sounds
what I
good.
think.
That. Yeah.
And also with the revealing concept, I was thinking about the rainbow itself and how that works because sunlight is white. I mean, it's we don't see any color in the sunlight, but yet when it goes through the atmospheric moisture, it splits off and reveals all the different colors that are there. So the
Mm-hmm.
rainbow kind of like it shows us things that we cannot generally see without
Mm-hmm.
the rainbow.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Yeah.
So the rainbow reveals things to us that we can't see.
And I think it's significant that after a storm, after it's rained, and you can't see the rainbow unless the sun does come out. So we maybe take comfort in knowing that when we will get through a storm, not just a literal thunderstorm, but if we're going through any kind of storm in our life, like illness or loss of a job, loss of a loved one, we're in the middle of that storm, which can seem like a flood to us, overwhelmed with emotions and things. Then there will be an end to it. And so to speak, the sun will come out. There will be an end to it. So maybe that's why, again, just random thinking off the top of my head, maybe that's why it requires the sun in order to see the rainbow as there is hope. You will come through this.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know, just kind of ramblings there. I'm sorry if that was too much off of a bunny trail there. But
Also, if you look on the last verse, 17, and God said to Noah, "This is the sign of the covenant." I think that that indicates that there was a rainbow there that he was pointing at, going, "This is the
hmm,
sign of the covenant."
mm-hmm.
Not just talking abstractly, but actually
Yeah.
there was a
Oh
rainbow there
yeah.
for them to look
Yeah.
at.
Yeah. Especially if they had never seen one that had been concealed, and he said, I'm going to put a rainbow, and Noah's saying, well, what's a rainbow? So yeah, then he showed him. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you're right on that. So, and it says we in verse 16, Hashem says, "The bow shall be in the cloud, and I will look upon it to remember the covenant that is everlasting between God and between every living." So, again, we've talked about this before, like when Noah was in the ark, God remembered him. Now, does God need the rainbow to remind him? Does he forget? Oh, yeah, I made that promise. Here we go, a promise again. I made that covenant. Oh, yeah. Oh, I remember that now. It's not, God doesn't forget. I think it's more for Noah's benefit and our benefit that it reminds us also of the promise in the covenant. The
But
promise
you're right.
again.
Several times in the Torah, it does say, "And God remembered."
Yeah.
So we'll
But
have to grapple with that.
yeah, we know he doesn't forget. And a lot of times, most times, it's always followed by an action. He remembers and he does something. So,
Yeah, yeah.
so yeah, when he sees that rainbow, yeah, interesting. Well, did you have anything else in these verses to point out, or do you have a takeaway? And we can maybe bring this session to a close.
Well, I think my takeaway is probably going to be about the rainbow. I'm just so fascinated, and I'm I'm going to have to research why I can't look at a rainbow, why I can't
Yeah,
stare. I think you can look, but you
you
just
can
can't
look.
stare.
Exactly. You can't stare.
So I'm going to have to research that. But because I'm so fascinated with rainbows, I think that's going to be my takeaway, that the rainbow takes something that we can't see and reveals it to us. So there are things that are out there that we can't see that eventually will be revealed to us.
Okay, good. And my takeaway is maybe a little different way to look at the rainbow. We've talked about it, reminds us that there will not be another flood to destroy the entire earth like this one. But why, let's think back. Why did God destroy everything to begin with? Because they had reached such a level of wickedness, and he caused the flood. So when we look at the rainbow, should we take it as a warning? Have have we reached, is it telling us, wait a minute, we have reached a point, maybe worldwide, or maybe just look at it personally. Have we reached a limit where God was at the verge of destroying us again, but he saw the rainbow and remembered? It stopped him from doing it again. Should we take it as, I need to stop and think about, what am I doing? Or is there an area in my life that I need to correct? Is God giving me a warning? Say, wait a minute, if it were not for the covenant that I made and the rainbow that reminds me, so to speak, of that covenant, I might be doing the same thing again.
Oh, interesting.
So maybe a little darker take on the rainbow,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. The rainbow as a warning.
it could
Huh.
maybe, I don't know. Because he says, I will look on it to remember the covenant. That's kind of what got me thinking along those lines, that maybe it can be taken as a warning, maybe both ways. We take comfort in it, but maybe also look at it as a time to stop and reflect. Where am I? Are there changes I need to make? Um, am I causing God to regret that he created me? Anyway, don't want to end
Very
it
deep.
on a gloomy note, but so anyway, any final thoughts then?
Well, I look forward to seeing another rainbow and saying the blessing.
Yes. Yes. Okay, well, we will say good night. Thank you for joining me and everybody else tonight who will listen to this later. Thank you, Nancy. Always
My
a
pleasure.
joy to discuss Torah with you. And we'll meet again next week in Sarah's tent.
Good night.
Good night.